Dear viewers, in this particular lecture, I will be discussing about the general characteristics and land adaptations of bryophytes. The bryophytes, as we know, comprises of about more than 960 genera and 24,000 species. These bryophytes occupies a very important position in the plant kingdom. The bryophytes are specially placed between the groups of Thallophyta and Pteridophyta. That is, the bryophytes are very important in this plant kingdom. They occupy a very important position between the thallophytes and the pteridophytes. That is, they play an evolutionary role whereby the thallophytes are present below the bryophytes and the pteridophytes are present above the bryophytes. These bryophytes usually are found in the damp, shady areas around the bogs, the swamps and the crevices. These bryophytes plays a very important role and have many economic features as well. Bryophytes are basically non-vascular land plants. They require water for reproduction. Many bryologists had classified the bryophytes into different groups, but according to the most recently accepted classification, where it has been placed that under ICBN, which is the International Code for Botanical Nomenclature, the bryophytes have been classified broadly into three separate groups, which are the liverworts, the moss and the hornworts. The mosses, as we can see, are a group of non-vascular land plants. They are usually found in the wet environments, the alpine regions. They are also found in the crevices and also the man-made structures like the sidewalks, etc. Many species of mosses are known. On an estimate, around 14,500 species of mosses are known, which occupies 75% of the total bryophyte population. These mosses plays a very important role. They are usually found around the barks of the trees, like here we can see in these pictures, like when they are found on the barks of the trees, they are known as the, like here it is seen that they are known as the epiphytes. The hornworts are a group of non-vascular land plants. They belong to the division of Anthoceratophyta. These hornworts get their special name from the fact that they have certain elongated stalk-like structures, as here we can see consists of certain stalk-like structures which are called as the sporophyte. At the base of the sporophyte is a protective structure which is known as the involucre. At the base of this involucre is present the gametophyte. The hornworts have belong to the groups of Anthoceros. Like if a cross section is being made, like here in this diagram we can see that if a cross section is being made, we can see that in each of the cells there is presence of a chloroplast, and this chloroplast fuses with other cell organelles to form a pyrenoid-like structure which takes part in the process of photosynthesis. And one of the most identifying features of the thallus of the hornworts is the presence of certain structures like that of the mucilage canals. Like here we can see that there are certain mucilage canals, and within these mucilage canals are present certain cyanobacteria which are known as the nostoc colonies. These nostoc colonies inhabit within these mucilage canals due to the presence of certain hormogonium inducing factor which are being released by these canals, which causes the nostoc colonies to inhabit in these areas, and as a result of which it gives the thallus a bluish green coloration. The liverworts, as we know, are also a group of non-vascular land plants. They are very similar to that of the moss, yet they are very different from the land plants that we see today. The reason behind is that these liverworts do not have any seeds, flowers or fruits, yet they produce spores which are required during the process of reproduction. The liverworts, as here in these diagrams are shown, are thalloid liverworts. These liverworts can be of several types. Mostly they are of the leafy liverworts and the thalloid liverworts. The leafy liverworts are very simple structures because they consist of simple leaves which are associated with that of the stem, and they can consist of a single row of cells. But on the contrary, the thalloid liverworts which are present consists of thick green tissue, as here we can see in this diagram that it has a thick green tissue in the center and has got several rows of cells. As a result, it is much more complex than that of the leafy liverworts. These liverworts are more than 8,000 species of liverworts are known to us, and one of the most common examples of these liverworts are like Mercantia riccia. Several theories have been put forward suggesting the origin of bryophytes. The two major commonly accepted theories are the algal hypothesis and the pteridophytean hypothesis. According to the algal hypothesis, which was being proposed by Bauer and Smith, it suggested that all the algal sperms are very common to that of the bryophytean sperms, since they require water during the process of reproduction and fertilization, as a result of which it suggests that these bryophytes might have an aquatic ancestry. Similarly, in the diagram, as here we can see that the presence of certain photosynthetic pigments like chlorophyll and xanthophyll is present both in the algae as well as in the bryophytes, which suggest that the bryophytes might have an origin which was similar to that of the algae. One of the major bryologists named Smith, he had suggested that an algae named Fischella has an origin from which the bryophytes might have evolved. The reason behind which is that there is presence of the similar type of thallus organization. The Fischella, which is a kind of green algae, belongs to the group of Chaetophoraceae. These bryophytes have algal origin, and according to the recently accepted theories by certain bryologists, they say that the primitive alga might had wanted to avoid certain form of competition, and therefore they had shifted to the subaerial habitat from where the bryophytes had evolved. Another common theory that was being put forward is the pteridophytean hypothesis. According to the pteridophytean hypothesis, the bryologists suggest that the resemblances between the sporogonium of the sex organs of pteridophytes and bryophytes, and the similarity, as here we can see, between the sporophytes of Anthoceros, which is a hornwort, to that of another fossil pteridophyte like that of the Horneophyton is very similar. It was been found that the sporophytic structures are similar, and on top of that, the stomata that was present both in the mosses, in the capsule of the mosses, as well as in these sporophytes are also similar to that of the pteridophytes. According to the bryologists, the bryophytes had developed from the pteridophytes by gradual reduction or simplification. Bryophytes, as here we can see, if the structure of the bryophytes is explained in details, it is been shown that the bryophytes, as here we can see, consists of either a leafy structure or a thalloid structure. The term bryophyte was given by Braun. These bryophytes was placed between the pteridophytes and thallophytes. The structure of the bryophytes, as here we can see, are a kind of leafy bryophytes which shows where the gametophyte is present at the base, and from these gametophytes arises a stalk-like structure which is known as the sporophyte, and at the apex of the sporophyte is present the capsule which is encircled by the calyptra. These bryophytes are usually of two types, of the leafy and the thalloid bryophytes. Now, at the base of these bryophytes is present certain rhizoids. These rhizoids are like that of the root hairs. Although rhizoids do not have true roots, instead these rhizoids are present. The rhizoids performs the functions of anchorage of the plant body to the substratum and absorption of minerals and nutrients from the soil to the rest of the plant body. If a section is being seen, as here in this diagram, through the hornwort thallus, it is seen that at both the upper and the lower areas there is presence of certain epidermis, which is the upper epidermis and the lower epidermis. The presence of the epidermis states the fact that it usually protects the plants during desiccation and against the extremes of temperature, since the epidermis is covered by a substance which is known as the cutin. Within this epidermis is present the cortex, and at the base of the lower epidermis, as here we can see, consists of certain rhizoids, which I had said earlier performs the functions of anchorage and absorption. The bryophytes usually have a thalloid plant body. The term thallus in botany usually refers to a plant which do not have leaves, stems or roots. The thallus can be both prostrate as well as erect. Like in this structure of Mercantia, the thalloid body, if it is seen closely, consists of certain hexagonal or polygonal areas, like here it can be seen, which is known as the areolae. Below this areolae lies the air chambers, which usually helps in the exchange of gases from the outer atmosphere to the inside of the plant body. And below these thallus lies the rhizoids, which performs the functions of anchorage and absorption. The bryophytes are usually a group of non-vascular land plants. They are very different from the vascular land plants like that of the ferns, the conifers and other flowering plants, since these vascular plants produces flowers, fruits and seeds and have true roots. On the contrary, the bryophytes which are there, they do not have true roots and instead possesses rhizoids, and they also do not have true flowers, fruits and seeds. Instead, they produce spores which are used during the process of reproduction, which suggests the fact that the bryophytes are usually non-vascular land plants and are very primitive in their origin. One of the most important characteristics of the bryophytes is the presence of rhizoids. As I had said earlier that the bryophytes do not have true roots, instead the rhizoids are present. Like here in these structures we can see that from the ventral surfaces of the thallus rises the rhizoids, which are root hair like structures which anchors the plant to the substratum and also absorbs the nutrients from the surface of the soil and sends it to other parts of the plant body. The rhizoids can be both unicellular as well as multicellular. In cases of liverworts, it possesses unicellular rhizoids, and in cases of mosses, they have multicellular rhizoids. In case of liverworts, the unicellular rhizoids, as here we can see, are divided into two groups, which are the smooth-walled and the tuberculate rhizoids. The smooth-walled rhizoids can be extended both from the inner as well as the outer surfaces, and the tuberculate rhizoids have certain concentric ring-like structures with certain peg-like projections which extends into the cell lumen. Apart from the rhizoids, there is presence of certain other structures which are known as the scales. These scales are usually of two types, the appendiculate and the ligulate scales. The appendiculate scales are usually present towards the midrib, and the ligulate scales are usually present on the marginal surfaces. The presence of the scales suggests the fact that they protect the bryophytes from the extremes of temperature. The bryophytes are also referred to as the amphibians of the plant kingdom. Like that of the amphibians of the animal kingdom, like a frog, which can stay both on land as well as in water, the bryophytes are also known as the amphibians, since they are adapted to the land surfaces, yet they require water during the process of fertilization. Like here in this diagram, we can see that from the male and the female gametophytes rises the sperms and the eggs, and the sperms are usually biflagellate in their nature, which requires water to swim towards the archegonium or the female reproductive organ, and in turn they fertilize the egg which is present within the archegonium and forms the zygote. The bryophytes undergo different modes of reproduction, namely the vegetative and the sexual reproduction. The most common forms of vegetative reproduction in bryophytes are the tuber formation, the gemma formation, the fragmentation, formation of certain apices, etc. In this particular slide, I would discuss about the modes of vegetative reproduction in details. For example, in the course of fragmentation, parts of the thallus gets fragmented, and as a result, the fragmented portions falls off, and when they fall on a suitable substratum and receive adequate amount of moisture and correct conditions of weather and temperature, they again develop into a new plant, as here we can see this in the liverwort named as Rixia. Similarly, for tuber formation, the parts of the plant body gets swollen to form certain tuber-like structures, which on getting dried up falls off, and upon getting a suitable media, they again develop into new plants. For example, it is usually seen in certain hornworts like that of the Anthoceros. The gemma cup formation is the most common type of vegetative reproduction which is seen in the bryophytes. These gemma cups are basically cup-shaped structures, and within these cup-shaped structures are enclosed certain vegetative bodies which are known as the gemma. Like here we can see in these diagrams that the gemma are usually enclosed by these cup-shaped structures, and they are dispersed from the gemma cups during rainfall, and like that of the other modes of vegetative reproduction, when they receive adequate amount of water, moisture and correct weather conditions, they again germinate into a new Mercantia plant. The bryophytes also undergo sexual reproduction. The sexual reproduction of bryophytes is of the oogamous type. That is, it possesses both the antheridia as well as the archegonia, and since it has oogamous kind of reproduction, the archegonia is usually larger in size as compared to that of the antheridia. Here in this slide, I would discuss about the archegoniophore of a liverwort. The archegoniophore usually refers to the female reproductive organ. Now, if a section as here is seen in this slide, the archegonia is a stalked structure which has a flask-shaped bottom at its base, and this flask-shaped structure is known as the venter, and within this venter lies the egg. From the venter, it has an elongated structure which is known as the neck. Within this neck is present the neck canal cells. The antheridiophore of the bryophytes usually consists of certain fertile cells which are protected by a jacket layer, and these fertile cells are known as the androcytes. These androcytes coalesce to form the biflagellate antherozoids. These biflagellate antherozoids are chemotactically attracted towards the archegonia of the bryophytes due to the release of certain sugar-like substances like malic acids and other protein-like substances, and during this entire course the neck canal cells they get disintegrated and allows these androcytes to enter and fertilize the egg which is present within the venter. The gametophytes of the bryophytes are usually dominant in nature since they occupy a major part of the life cycle of the bryophytes. Like here in this diagram we can see that there is presence of a young leafy gametophyte, and within this gametophyte there is presence of the antheridia and the archegonia, which are the male and the female reproductive organs respectively. From these antheridia and archegonia arises the sperms and the egg, which fuse together to form the zygote. From this zygote rises the sporophytic generation, and in turn it produces the spores. Therefore, in this diagram we could see that since the gametophytes occupy a majority part of the life cycle of bryophytes, therefore they are much more dominant than that of the sporophytic generation. Here also in this structure we can see that there is presence of certain gametophytic structures, and from here arises certain stalk-like structures which represents the sporophyte. The bryophytes have alternation of generation, which means that they undergo both the gametophytic and sporophytic generation within their one single life cycle. Like here in this diagram, both the male and the female gametophytes produces their gametes, which is the egg and the antherozoid, which again undergoes syngamy or fertilization, and from here they produce the oospores. The moment they produce the oospore, they enter into the sporophytic generation, and from there they produce the embryo, the sporogonium and the spore mother cells. Up till the spore mother cells, it was the sporophytic generation. These spore mother cells, when they undergo meiosis or the reduction division, they produce the spores. From these spore stage onward, they again enter into the gametophytic stage. Therefore, in one single life cycle of bryophyte, both the sporophytic and gametophytic generations are present. Now, I would discuss about the land adaptations of bryophytes. One of the major land adaptation of bryophyte is the presence of epidermis. The epidermis, as here we can see, is both present on the upper as well as the lower surfaces. These epidermis are usually covered by a substance known as the cutin, which protects the plant body from extremes of temperature and also prevents desiccation, thereby allowing these bryophytes to survive even in extremes of conditions, and which is one of the major land adaptive features of these bryophytes. Another adaptive feature is the presence of rhizoids. The rhizoids, as I had said earlier, are usually found on the ventral surfaces of the thallus. They help in the anchorage of the plant to the substratum and absorption of nutrients from the soil surface and transfer them to the rest of the plant body. Next, a land adaptive feature of the bryophyte is the presence of air pores. These air pores are present on the upper surfaces of the thallus, and beneath these air pores lies the air chambers. Because of these air pores, they help in the exchange of gases from the outer atmosphere to the inner part of the plant. As a result, it helps the plant body to respire during these conditions. One of the most important land adaptive features of these bryophytes, as here in this diagram we can see that there is presence of a single large chloroplast within each of these cells. The chloroplasts, as we know, performs the functions of photosynthesis, and therefore they supply the required amount of food and nutrition to the plant body. Many stomatal types are seen in the bryophytes. In the stomatal types, there is presence of certain subsidiary cells or the guard cells which are associated with the pores. Like here in these diagrams, we can see certain substomatal cavities or certain collapsed stomata which usually opens or closes depending upon the amount of light and shade which is present, and as a result of which it usually protects the excess loss of moisture from the plant body and therefore keeps the plant body moist even in extremes of condition. Another protective layer which is present within the bryophytes is the jacket layer. The jacket layer, as here we can see, is present in the hornworts, which usually is a protective covering within which the antheridium is present. It usually protects these antheridium from getting ruptured by any external agents and therefore is protective in function and helps these plant body to survive even in extremes of conditions. Here also in this particular diagram we can see that there is presence of certain sterile jacket layers within which the sporocytes are present, and the sporocytes usually divide by meiosis, producing the meiospores. There are triradiate marks on these meiospores, and therefore it suggests that since the jacket layer is present which acts as a protective structure or a protective layer around these bryophytes, it usually causes them or allows them to stay on the land even if they are exposed to conditions which are not suitable for their living. There is also jacket layer which is present in that of the liverworts, where it is found surrounding the antheridia as well as the archigonia, and as I had said earlier, it performs the similar functions of protection. The spore dispersal mechanism is a very known or a renowned phenomenon which happens in that of the mosses. Like in this diagram we can see of Funaria hygrometrica, where it consists of an elongated stalk-like structure which is known as the seta, and at the top of the seta there is presence of certain capsule-like structures which is protected by the operculum. During the weather conditions, this operculum opens up and this is done by annulus. It causes the exposure of certain teeth-like structures which is the peristome teeth, as here we can see in these diagrams. Next, what happens is that these peristome teeth usually open up and causes the dispersal of spores. The spores, on finding a suitable substratum and correct amount of moisture and weather conditions, they again develop into new structures. Therefore, this spore dispersal mechanism allows the bryophytes to get adapted to the land habitat. So now I would conclude this lecture on bryophytes. Thank you.